Imagine this. You're driving alone down a pitch-black road, desperate just to make it home in one piece. The night is silent, your headlights cutting through the darkness, when suddenly something appears in front of you that should not be there. What follows isn't just unsettling, it's the kind of nightmare that will cling to you for the rest of your life. Tonight, on Dark Secrets, we dive into 11 terrifying, true encounters from drivers who found themselves trapped in the deadliest situations imaginable. These aren't campfire tales or movie scripts. These are real events experienced by ordinary people, some of whom barely lived to share what happened. From sinister hitchhikers with hidden motives to carefully staged traps meant to lure innocent drivers. These stories will make you question every shadow in your rearview mirror. So if you're someone who drives alone at night, consider this your warning. I'm your host, and this is Dark Secrets, where we uncover the chilling experiences real people wish they could forget. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because after hearing these stories, you'll never look at a late night drive the same way again. Our first tale begins with a young man, just 24 years old, living in Portland. At the time, he was a software developer working on a major project. His best friend, Jake, had recently inherited a remote farmhouse deep in the countryside, an isolated property surrounded for miles by farmland and thick forest. No neighbors, no streetlights, not even cell service for the last stretch of the drive. It was late October, a Friday night, and after hours of installing new flooring and reminiscing with Jake over beers, exhaustion set in. By midnight, his body ached from the hard labor, and every part of him wanted to crash on Jake's couch until morning. But he couldn't. He had a client meeting the next day, a meeting that could secure him a six-figure contract. Missing it wasn't an option. Jake tried to warn him. Don't risk it, man. These back roads aren't safe when you're this tired. And he wasn't wrong. The route home wound through endless stretches of farmland, completely deserted at night. No traffic, no gas stations, no houses, just long ribbons of asphalt swallowed by darkness. Still, stubbornness won. He loaded up on coffee, rolled down the windows for the sting of cold air, and blasted music to stay awake. Jake walked him to the car, insisting at least on one promise. Text me when you make it home, and if you get too tired, pull over. For the first 20 minutes, everything went smoothly. The music kept him alert. The road was empty, and his headlights carved a safe tunnel through the night. But then, something appeared in his lane that forced him to slam the brakes. A suitcase, not tipped over, not broken, not tossed aside, but standing perfectly upright in the middle of the road. A sleek, hard-shell case that looked expensive, almost brand new. It was positioned with eerie precision, as though someone had carefully placed it there as a trap. He sat frozen, staring at it, his tired brain trying to rationalize. Maybe it fell from a car. Maybe by some miracle it landed upright. But the longer he looked, the more impossible that seemed. The placement was too exact, too intentional. A voice in his head screamed that something wasn't right. He resisted the urge to get out and move it. Instead, he steered into the opposite lane and drove around, glancing in the rearview mirror as it shrank into the distance, still standing perfectly upright, illuminated for a few seconds by his taillights. He tried to shake it off, but just minutes later, the road presented him with something even more unsettling. A pickup truck blocking the lane entirely. An old model, dented and scraped, as though it had been in a recent collision. No headlights, no hazard lights, no driver inside. The silence of the night pressed down on him as dread grew heavier. First the suitcase, now this. Coincidence? Or something more? And then, before he could even catch his breath, came the third obstacle. A man, standing dead center in the road, waving his arms for help. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, and his smile, too forced, too desperate, was anything but reassuring. What happened next would turn a simple, late night drive into a deadly game of survival. The man I encountered that night was never identified, never caught. The truck he claimed as his was never located either, almost certainly stolen, abandoned, and hidden away after my escape. Police believed he was responsible not only for Sarah Chen's murder, but possibly for other unsolved disappearances in the region. What chills me most is how close I came to becoming another one of his victims. If I hadn't noticed that hidden car in the field, if I'd been just a little more trusting, or even slightly more tired, I might have let him into my vehicle. And then I would have been trapped inside a car with a predator, headed for some remote place where no one would ever find me. The setup was disturbingly clever: a suitcase to spark curiosity, a broken down truck to create an obstacle, and finally, a desperate man in distress, appealing to the one instinct every decent person has: to help. It was a predator's game of psychology, manipulating human kindness into vulnerability. Sometimes I find myself thinking about Sarah Chen. Did she see the same suitcase? Did she slow down for the same abandoned truck? Or did she encounter the man first, never realizing the danger until it was already too late? The police told me my 911 call likely prevented other deaths, warning locals about the tactics being used. But then they revealed something that still makes my skin crawl. This wasn't the first case of its kind. Similar traps had been reported in other states, suggesting the killer may have traveled across the country, hunting lonely drivers in the dead of night. Since that night, I've never driven back roads alone again. I've also never ignored my instincts when something feels wrong, because sometimes being cautious, even rude, can save your life. The person asking for help isn't always the victim. Sometimes they're the predator. I'm 32 years old now, and for the past 8 years, I've worked as a long-haul trucker across the Pacific Northwest. It's not a glamorous job, but it pays well. And truth be told, I've always enjoyed the solitude. Just me, the open highway, and the endless scenery changing mile after mile. But around Christmas one year, during a brutal stretch of winter, I learned just how dangerous that solitude could be. I had picked up a routine delivery of electronics in Seattle, bound for Spokane. The plan was simple: drive overnight and drop off the shipment by morning. The weather was unstable: snow one night, rain the next. By the time I passed the mountain range, it was already 11 p.m., and I stopped for my first break at a quiet little truck stop called Mountain View Travel Plaza. It wasn't much: a convenience store, a restroom, a few fuel pumps, but it was clean, lit, and offered hot coffee, which was good enough for me. That's when I noticed him. A man stood near the back of the building, barely visible under the dim light. At first, I assumed he was smoking or making a call. But no, he wasn't moving. He was just standing there, staring right at me. I brushed it off, climbed back into my cab, sipped my coffee, checked my GPS, even texted my wife to let her know I was making progress. But when I glanced up again, he was still there. Same posture, same direction, watching. My truck was the only one parked on that side of the lot. There was nothing else for him to be looking at. Unease settled over me, but I forced myself to focus on the road ahead. Eventually, I pulled out of the lot and drove into the night. Snow started to fall in a thin veil across the highway, the road nearly empty, my headlights carving through white silence. But then, something flickered in my mirror, a faint flash, like metal reflecting light. I checked my mirrors again, but saw nothing. Empty highway. I told myself it was debris or ice, but deep down, my gut twisted. Minutes later, I saw it again. This time, more clearly. Not debris, not ice, a car, a dark sedan tucked so close behind my trailer that it was completely hidden in my blind spot. The only sign of it came when it drifted just slightly, its windshield catching my headlights. And worse, its headlights were off. At first, I tried to rationalize it. An inexperienced driver, maybe, but no one follows a semi that closely, that deliberately, with lights off. It was intentional. I tested my suspicion, shifting into the left lane. The car followed. I drifted back right. They did too. Every move I made, they mirrored. Suddenly, the image of the man from the truck stop came flooding back. Was it him? Had he followed me for over an hour? I decided to force his hand, pretending to slow down with mechanical issues. I eased off the gas. The car had to reveal itself. For a brief moment, I saw it in full. A dark sedan, maybe 10 years old, a single driver inside. As soon as the driver realized I'd spotted him, the car dropped back and melted into the night. For a while, I convinced myself it was over. But when exhaustion forced me to stop at a lonely rest area hours later, I would learn just how wrong I was. Because sometime during the night, I opened my eyes to find that same man, his face pressed against my passenger window, staring in at me, eyes wide and unblinking. The delivery job seemed simple enough. Pick up the food, follow the GPS, hand it off, smile for a tip. But the night this happened, a quiet Tuesday in March, was anything but routine. Business at Tony's Pizza had been slow. By 8 p.m., I was already daydreaming about clocking out early. When Tony Jr. called out a new order, I figured it would be a quick, easy run. 2 medium pizzas, pepperoni and supreme, headed to a neat little subdivision called Oakwood Estates, about 15 minutes away. I'd been there before. Safe streets, nice homes, good tippers. Nothing about it set off alarm bells. I slid the pizzas into the insulated bag, grabbed the receipt, and headed to my old Honda. The total came to 28 to 50. With any luck, I'd get at least $5 for my trouble. The customer had paid online, so all I had to do was drop off the food and smile. Easy. It was dark, but not late enough for the streets to be empty. I turned up my music and settled into the drive. About 5 minutes in, I noticed a car pulling out of a side street behind me. A dark sedan, maybe a Honda or Toyota. Totally normal. But turn after turn, the car stayed behind me. Left onto Maple Street, right onto Oak Avenue. Still there. By the time I was nearing the entrance to Oakwood Estates, the hairs on my neck were standing up. Coincidence? Maybe. But I kept checking my mirror. Inside the subdivision, streetlights glowed over rows of identical 2-story homes and manicured lawns. A family-friendly place, safe by reputation. I followed my GPS deeper in, turning corner after corner. The sedan turned with me, Every time, my stomach tightened. Were they lost? Following me because they thought I knew where I was going? Finally, the GPS announced my destination, 1247 Birch Lane. The house looked welcoming, 2 stories, porch light glowing. As I pulled up, I saw the sedan slow as it passed, then continue down the street. Relief washed over me. See? Paranoia. Just another driver on their way. I walked up to the door, pizza bag in hand. Lights were on inside. Good sign. The door opened to reveal a woman in her early 30s, wearing a bathrobe, clearly ready for bed. Hi, pizza delivery for 1247 Birch Lane, I said, double checking the receipt. She looked genuinely puzzled. I didn't order any pizza. I checked again. Same address, same order. She shook her head. Sorry, you've got the wrong house. I apologized, explaining I'd call the restaurant to clear it up. But the online system didn't give me a customer number. Credit card orders didn't. She offered a polite smile, then shut the door. Frustrated, I headed back toward my car, pizzas still in hand. That's when I saw it. The dark sedan that had been trailing me was parked directly behind my Honda, engine running, headlights off, blocking me in. Cold dread spread through me. Maybe they lived here. Maybe it was nothing. But my instincts screamed otherwise. The car sat idling, exhaust curling in the cold night air. No one moved. No one got out. Just watching. I decided to start my car and see if they'd leave. I put the pizzas on the passenger seat, started the engine, and backed up slightly. The sedan didn't budge. My heart began to pound. This wasn't coincidence. This was a trap. The driveway was wide enough for me to turn around and cut across the lawn if I had to. I decided to go for it, but as soon as I shifted into drive, the sedan's doors opened. 4 men stepped out. Hoodies, baseball caps, faces hidden. One kept his hand inside his sweatshirt pocket, like he was gripping something. Time slowed. They weren't running. They didn't need to. They were closing in, deliberate and calm. I gunned the engine, trying to swing the car around, but the wheels slid off the pavement into soft dirt, crashing into a decorative tree. The car jerked to a stop. Shouts, footsteps. One man rushed my driver's side door. Instinct took over. I threw open the door and ran across the yard, into the street, cutting between houses, leaping fences, adrenaline burning through me. Behind me, voices shouted but grew fainter. I didn't stop until I reached a main road, ducked behind a gas station, and called 911. The police found my car crashed and the pizzas still sitting on the passenger seat. The sedan and its occupants were gone. Investigation revealed the horrifying truth. The order had been placed with a stolen credit card, the address chosen for its isolation and lack of escape routes. It wasn't about pizza. It was about luring a delivery driver into a trap. I never went back to deliveries after that. Tony Jr. moved me back to kitchen duty, but every phone order made my stomach knot. 4 men, a fake order, an elaborate setup, and they were never caught. The scariest part? Police said it wasn't the first case like this. Similar tactics were being used in other cities to target delivery drivers. Young, alone, carrying cash, sent to predetermined locations. A growing trend. Looking back, I realize how close I came to vanishing. If I hadn't noticed the car, if I hadn't been suspicious enough to run, I might not be here telling this story. Sometimes paranoia isn't paranoia at all. Sometimes it's the only thing keeping you alive. The further we drove, the stranger the night became. Up ahead, flashing hazards glowed against the darkness. Another stranded vehicle. But this time, it wasn't just a lone driver waving for help. A minivan sat dead on the shoulder, surrounded by 4 men. They weren't dressed like a family on vacation. No kids, no luggage, just 4 figures in dark clothing, spread out almost deliberately, as if they were waiting for something or someone. As I slowed, one of them stepped directly into my lane, waving his arms aggressively, trying to force me to stop. The others shifted into position, 2 blocking the shoulder, another edging closer to the center line. They weren't asking for help. They were closing a trap. Something's wrong, I muttered to my wife. My hands tightened on the wheel. There are 4 guys blocking the road. Her voice shot back instantly, sharp with fear. Don't stop. Get out of there. Now. I swerved hard into the left lane, pressing down on the accelerator. The men's faces lit up in my headlights, young, angry, realizing their plan had failed. One of them actually sprinted a few steps after the car, shouting something I couldn't hear over the roar of the engine. Then I glanced into the rear view. My blood ran cold. The broken down minivan had roared back to life without hesitation. Its hazards blinked off, headlights snapped on, and the vehicle peeled away from the shoulder, chasing me at full speed. They're following me, I told my wife, my voice cracking. How fast are you going? She asked. 80, maybe 90. I pushed harder. 95, 100. My car shook as it climbed into triple digits, but in the mirror, the minivan clung to me, a dark predator on the empty interstate. For miles, it refused to back down. Then, suddenly, its headlights shrank, fading into the distance. The chase was over. Or maybe they had decided that getting caught in a high-speed pursuit wasn't worth it. I didn't breathe easy until the city lights of Charlotte appeared ahead. The very first thing I did was drive straight to the nearest police station. I wanted this on record. The officer, who listened to my statement, leaned forward with grim interest. You did the right thing by not stopping, he said. That stretch of highway has been a hot spot. 3 victims in the last 2 months weren't so lucky. He went on to explain. The criminals' method was simple, but chilling. They staged fake breakdowns to lure drivers into stopping. Once someone pulled over, they swarmed, robbing them at gunpoint. Wallets, phones, even entire cars. And the danger was escalating. The last victim ended up in the hospital, the officer admitted. Concussion, beaten when he tried to resist. Next time, it could be worse. Patrols were increased. Within a week, police arrested 5 men who matched my description. Their vehicle, the same minivan, was discovered with stolen cell phones, wallets, and cash totaling over $20,000. Victims who resisted had been assaulted. And the most disturbing revelation? This wasn't random. The group had a system, roles, tactics. They studied traffic patterns, timing their ambushes for late evening in areas with no escape routes and few witnesses. It wasn't chaos. It was organized crime. The thought chills me to this day. How close I came to being surrounded, robbed, maybe worse. If I had stopped for that first stranded family, I'd have walked straight into their trap. The experience rewired how I see the road at night. Now, I don't pull over for strangers. If someone looks like they need help, I call 911 from a safe distance because I've learned something critical. The road is a hunting ground, and not every stranded motorist is what they seem. And yet, that wasn't the end of the strange encounters, because what came next was something darker, something I still can't fully explain. There was something about his tone, low, sharp, and threatening, that sent a chill down my spine. I thanked him quickly and began to roll up the window, but he leaned in one last time. "And don't come back," he warned. "Folks around here don't take kindly to strangers poking around." My hands shook as I shifted into reverse, maneuvering my car around in the narrow road. The pickup truck pulled out right behind me, tailing me like an armed escort. For nearly a mile, it stayed glued to my bumper, its headlights pressing into my mirror like a silent threat. Finally, it veered off down a dirt path and vanished into the woods. Relieved, I drove back toward the town I'd seen earlier, the odd little place with old storefronts and silent people. But when I reached where it should have been, the road looked different, empty, no buildings, no lights, no trace of life. The town had vanished as if it had never existed. Panic set in. My GPS was frozen, refusing to connect. My fuel gauge dipped dangerously low, and with the sun sliding beneath the horizon, the thought of being stranded overnight in this wasteland made my pulse race. I pressed forward, praying for a familiar sign. After what felt like hours, I finally spotted it. A highway marker for Route 2. I almost cried with relief. Somehow, I'd been driving in a giant circle, ending up 50 miles from where I'd started. By the time I rolled into Great Falls, exhausted and shaking, it was nearly 10 p.m., 3 hours later than planned. The next morning, I couldn't shake the mystery. I pulled up detailed maps, satellite images, anything that might explain what I'd seen, but there was nothing. According to every record, there was no town out there, only forest, old mining claims, and stretches of abandoned road. Locals, I asked, just looked puzzled. No one had heard of a town matching my description, except for one older man at a gas station. When I explained what I saw, his face shifted. "You mean Millerville?" he asked cautiously. "I don't know what it was called," I replied. "There weren't any signs. Millerville's been gone since the 80s. It was a mining town, but when the mine closed, people left. Most of the buildings were torn down years ago. Nothing left but broken foundations and dirt roads. But I had been there. I'd spoken to people. I'd seen cars and shops with my own eyes." The man shrugged. "Maybe squatters. Folks living off-grid out there. Not the kind of people you'd want to run into." That explanation made some sense, but it didn't explain why the town had literally vanished when I drove back, or why my GPS cut out the moment I entered that area. I never solved the mystery. Maybe I stumbled onto some kind of hidden community, deliberately keeping outsiders away. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me in the stress of being lost. Or maybe it was something far stranger. What I do know is this: I never again trusted unmarked detours through rural Montana. I learned to carry paper maps, to fill my tank before long stretches of wilderness, and to never assume the road ahead is safe. Because out there, one wrong turn can put you in a place that doesn't exist or isn't meant to be found. And yet, the road wasn't finished with me, because just when I thought my nightmare was over, another encounter would prove that danger doesn't always come from ghosts or vanishing towns. Sometimes it comes from the people who walk among us. The SUV suddenly swerved to block my path, while the pickup truck crept dangerously close from behind. It was obvious now. They weren't random drivers. They were working together. Within moments, two more vehicles joined in. Another pickup truck sliding up on my left, and a sedan locking into position directly behind me. I was completely boxed in. 4 vehicles, moving in perfect formation, caging me in like a predator circling its prey. I tried speeding up to break free, but the cars ahead accelerated too, never letting me pass. When I hit the brakes, the ones behind instantly closed the gap. No matter what I did, they matched me move for move. I was trapped inside a rolling convoy, and my pulse was pounding harder with every passing second. But what did they want? Were they planning to rob me, force me off the road, or was it something even darker? I tried to catch a glimpse of the drivers, but the tinted windows revealed nothing. The vehicles themselves looked ordinary, the kind you'd see anywhere on a Texas highway, and that made it even more terrifying. For nearly 15 minutes, we drove in this deadly formation at exactly 65 miles per hour. I reached for my phone, desperately trying to dial 911, but my signal kept dropping. Each time I connected, the call cut off before I could explain. Panic surged through me. Then I spotted an exit sign, a truck stop up ahead. It was my one shot. I stayed calm, pretending to hold the lane, and at the very last moment, I swerved across 3 lanes and shot down the exit ramp. Tires screeched, horns blared. The convoy scrambled to react. The truck behind me couldn't make the sharp turn. The SUV slammed its brakes, nearly causing a collision. For a brief, shining second, it felt like I had fooled them, but I wasn't free. As I pulled into the truck stop, I noticed the sedan had managed to follow. Its headlights glared behind me as it rolled into the lot. Heart hammering, I sped toward the front of the brightly lit building and parked right at the entrance. Without wasting a second, I bolted out of my car and ran inside. The place was crowded with travelers and truckers. For the first time in what felt like hours, I felt safe. I rushed to a security guard and breathlessly explained what happened. At first, he didn't believe me until we looked outside. The sedan sat at the edge of the lot, engine running, lights on, just watching. The guard immediately called the police, but by the time officers arrived, the sedan had vanished into the night. When I gave my statement, the detectives looked grim. This wasn't road rage. They told me it matched reports of a human trafficking operation, a group that worked in teams, using multiple vehicles to surround lone drivers, forcing them off highways into remote areas where victims would disappear without a trace. Several people had already gone missing along that same stretch of Interstate 30. My reckless decision to swerve across traffic wasn't just desperate, it likely saved my life. But the nightmare didn't end there. Later that same month, another chilling story surfaced. This time, it wasn't on the highway, it was inside a rideshare car.